It's cool to be able to take a artist, right, a graphic artist, a farmer, and a roaster sitting doing something like this now, right? In the next few weeks, I'll be doing this, and the graphic designer is going to be telling the farmer their story. The farmer is going to be telling the graphic designer their story,
Right.
and I will be kind of sitting there and saying, hey, this is what I want for my coffee roaster. I mean, when would you even think that would have been possible, where somebody who's a tech geek meets a farmer and meets somebody who's trying to just mediate that entire amalgamation? It's a very beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful thing for me, at least, right?
Yeah.
And that's just my trip, man. That's just my trip in life, to be able to make people talk to each other who would have never met in ordinary circumstances, would have no connection with each other.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Daily Ish Pod. Super happy to have you here. Today's episode is going to be very, very special, as we are going to talk about coffee and everything around the coffee and the coffee business and the roasteries and all the sustainability practices and the farms and the farmers and where coffee comes from, how it is being served, the Indian scene of coffee, the international scene of coffee, and everything around the coffee. And if you have been following me on my Instagram or also in my YouTube channel, you must be knowing that I love coffee, and coffee is the only beverage I spend a lot of money on and invest a lot of time in. So it is very close to me. A couple of years back, when I was staying in Berlin and Milan and visiting Mumbai, that time I visited one of the cafes run by Dope Coffee Roasters, and I really enjoyed the coffee, and I purchased beans from there. And ever since then, whenever I visited India, or for the last whole year, whenever I need coffee, Dope was one of the primary places I always looked for, because I really like the coffee they make. I really like the branding they have. I really like the culture they are trying to set, the brand identity and the vibe they are creating. Everything was very fascinating. So I always enjoyed the whole coffee experience with Dope Coffee Roasters. And in today's video, we have Rizwan Amlani, who is one of the co-founders of Dope Coffee Roasters, in conversation with us, walking us through the whole coffee scene, as I said. And we will also be talking about the business aspect of it, the entrepreneurial aspect of it. So I'm very excited to present to you this amazing episode on Daily Ish Pod. If you're listening to it right now, come to YouTube channel so you can enjoy the video with us. You can be part of our conversation by looking at our faces. And if you're watching it and you want to continue listening to it even while working or commuting if lockdown is not there, or while working on stuff, you can just go to any of the podcasting apps and just type Daily Ish Pod and listen to this particular episode. With that said, guys, I'm going to welcome you back to the Daily Ish Pod. I'm going to quickly introduce myself as well, because I think we forgot to do that. So my name is Suyog, also known as the Fun Indian Guy. I'm a creative strategy and innovation consultant, service designer, filmmaker, musician, podcaster, and a founder of an online innovation lab called Futuring Now. And this is the Daily Ish Pod, as well as the Fun Indian Guy channel, where we talk about creativity, design, innovation, and lifestyle. With that said, let's set the stage, hit the music, and start talking about Dope Coffee. Thank you so much, Rizwan, for joining the podcast. Super happy to have you here. Very excited to have this conversation going. I just had my cup of coffee roasted by your roastery. So
Thanks.
Just pumped up to have this conversation. I hope you're excited as well.
Absolutely. So, Yog, thank you so much for having me over, and thank you for listening to all the crap I'm going to give you in the coming few minutes. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And, I'm so happy to be talking to somebody who genuinely loves coffee. It's not that I don't talk to other people on other podcasts, but it just feels comfortable. It feels like home when somebody does understand coffee. And I think that's the gospel that we want to kind of spread as well as Dope Coffee Roasters and myself. So thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to me.
Super. Great. So let's start from the origin story of Dope Coffee, like how it came to be, what was the process like, and
Right.
why you started, basically, because third wave coffee is not very usual in India, and back then it was not at all usual. Now things are picking up, but what was the origin thingy behind it?
So, how it really started is that I was working in a restaurant company, and I was doing food innovation and brand experience at this company. And this company does restaurant like Social, Smokehouse Deli, Saltwater Cafe, so very established brand. And one of these days, while I was working on a project, in one of our restaurants, Riaz, who's my elder brother, and also the MD and CEO of Impresario, had a meeting aligned with this gentleman called Nitu Pahumal. I didn't know who he was or what he was there for. I knew it was something to do with coffee. And then when he came over, he started telling us a story about what he does. And what he does essentially is that he is an extractor of caffeine. That means he is part of coffee, but in a very different manner. So what he does is he extracts caffeine from coffee and then sells it to companies like Red Bull and
Right.
Coke and so on and so forth, even pharmaceuticals. So when he came to us, he was like, hey, listen, I do this, and what I'm left behind with is decaf coffee, right? And Impresario was always known for doing really, really good coffee, even before the first wave or the second wave. These were the first guys to do a brand called Mocha. Everybody knows this brand, at least my age group knows this brand very, very well. It was called Coffees and Conversations. And it did about 21 single origins back in the year 2000, and the first one to have French press and other brewing gadgets around it. So
Right.
it was like, and when Nitu came to us, he said, I have this decaf coffee left. I'm trying to invest in a small roaster at home. I'll probably roast it in my balcony, and can I sell it to your restaurant company? So I think at that point, I kind of came on the table, and I was just listening to this guy speak to Riaz, and I think, to be honest, I was not picking up the fact that this could be something that I would be doing. But more this conversation led forward, the more I realized that, hey, this is a very cool thing, like, to be able to roast something and sell it like artisanally to you. Mind you, at this time, I had no idea what first wave, second wave, third wave was. Like, if somebody came and told me about the first wave or second wave or third wave of coffee, I'd be like, can I just have a cup of coffee? Like, ये सब मतलब इस कप के बारे में बात करने की क्या ज़रूरत है? Is coffee, right? And what else can it be? I mean, we've already seen the best of what coffee is with mocha. So I thought I knew it all, to be honest. I was sitting on that chair thinking, okay, I already know it all about coffee. And I knew about what Indian pea berry is and what Indian Robusta is, and what it means to have 100% Arabica blend, and that is premium. And anything with Robusta is like not premium. But when Nitu was speaking to me, I was like, how difficult can this be, right? Let's just go at it, maybe we can make a company together and we'll see how this thing pans out. And then, it'll be another way of me of doing, because I was also a chef.
Right.
I was a chef for about 7 years. So how difficult could roasting be, right? Like once you're in a commercial kitchen working as a chef, you just think that you can do anything and everything when it comes to, processing food of
Right.
any sort. And that's how the story really started. And when we actually imported our first roaster from Turkey. It was a 500 gram roaster. The person who sold it to us conned us. So basically, for anything that you cook, you need a place for smoke to exit.
Right.
You need a cooling area. You need all of that. This guy just sent us a roaster, which roasts coffee. Just has two buttons.
Okay.
One is to heat the roaster, and second is to, I don't know what the second one even did. Like, it was just like it cut off at a certain point. You could set the temperature,
Right.
so it reached a particular temperature, and then it would cut off,
Right.
and then you would put the coffee inside and roast it. And we had no idea what a roaster should really be like. We said that we'll just start roasting. So for me, that was a roaster, and and they were not much like when we started off. There was no content on the internet saying कि ऐसा roasting होता है या ये होता है वो होता है.
Right.
And I was so naive or stupid, I don't know. I just felt like there's nobody else who's doing this. I never cared to look at what was out there, who else is doing it. I just said, bring it over, we'll see. I roasted coffee for a few days. One day we burnt the coffee, and there was a fire in the. So we have something called a pyrolysis. Pyrolysis means fire in technical terms, right? So coffee after the second crack, which is like super dark roast or French roast or Vienna roast, whatever you call it. After that, the coffee heats up so much that can actually cause fire.
Oh man.
I had no idea about this, so we literally burnt the house. I was smoking. My brother had given me this place where we could do this coffee roasting. He told me to f off and get the f out of here, because you're like, what the f are you guys doing with this, right? Like, kya kar rahe ho tum log? And it was a very embarrassing moment for me. I think it was a very, not only embarrassing, it was also ego dilution in a way. Coffee was trying to teach me to treat it with respect. And I think what I was getting is I was getting agitated. Ke ye kaise, how can I not understand what this is, because it's just coffee at the end of the day. People have been roasting it on pans in Ethiopia. How can I not just roast coffee? And we obviously thought that we only roast decaf at that time. And but that day was the day that I decided that I'm going to learn better. I'm going to research better. Also, there was a lot of pressure because money was now involved. We bought this roaster. You know, my brother had invested money. I had invested money. Then Nitu had invested money. And Nitu was like looking up to us, saying like, भाई ये तो इंडस्ट्री एक्सपर्ट्स है, रेस्टोरेंट चलाते हैं, कैफे चलाते हैं, इनको तो खाना पकाने को आता ही होगा ना. तो so this is like such an embarrassing scenario, and then I said, we have to make this happen. And that's when I started my coffee journey and learning about what coffee is, and spoke to my equipment suppliers. They introduced me to somebody who introduced me to somebody who was estate owner, and that's how it all began. And everywhere I went, telling people that, hey, I want to now roast this coffee and serve it fresh. In small batches, in 500-gram batches. They were very excited. Farmers were very excited. They also knew the background that we really came from. They knew that we did successful restaurants, and unke estate ka kuch hoga.
Right.
Again, at this time, I did not know what first wave, second wave, third wave of coffee was, to be honest. I had no clue. I went to multiple channels like the Coffee Board of India. I tried to learn something over there. I started looking at a lot of stuff abroad, on YouTube, to understand what is that. And at this stage, there's only one other brand that I'm going to mention, because for me, they are the father of Indian third wave, is Blue Tokai. It's the only other brand that I came across doing something like this. And I was like, wow, these guys are already doing something like this. Why can't I learn from them? Or what, maybe try and emulate something that they are doing, or some people who just like chip dalo, you know what I'm saying? Like just copy the shit out of this brand. But luckily, this is not a pedigree. Whenever we do a business, we do it with utmost care, utmost precaution, making sure that we don't hurt any of the brand sentiments.
Right.
And what we realized is that there were a lot of brands out there who were doing some sort of third wave, but Blue Tokai was right up there with their quality, with their estate, this, that, and the other. So that was actually, I learned about Blue Tokai after I burnt the coffee down, after I did all of this stuff, right? And it was a good experience in that way, because at least I felt like, I did not look at somebody's business and be like, mujhe bhi karna hai.
Right.
I think most businesses which start like that also have a very so either you can look at a business and be like, I can make this better, or you look at a business and be like, no, I'm just going to eat his market share or her market share, right? And the latter is not the part of my DNA. My DNA is not to go into somebody's business and start eating because I have the ability to do so or the capital to do so. I'm going to take some of their business away. We started from scratch. I also wanted to then, the inspiration, I must agree, was Blue Tokai, where it comes to, what it means to do single estate or single origin coffees. But that's the only common part. And then I ensured that we never ever did the same coffee estate, or at least the same processing as them. Right? We took enough care to find more estates and bring more people into the third wave culture, or farmers into the third wave culture, as opposed to just going after the same coffee estates that that Blue Tokai did, for that matter, at that time. So that's how it all started. That's the beginning of it. So our natural questions to ask was, how do we position ourselves? How do we be different? What will be our USP? What will be different about this brand that we are about to do? At this stage, we had not named the brand.
Right.
We were just doing research and development. I was going pretty much. It went 1.5 to 2 years. Went into just discovering coffee estates, and we put in that much effort into understanding what this business means. And that has been like a family mantra, and it has always been for us ke do all your research is okay. You don't have any, because a lot of people kept asking me, "Kab chalu karoge brand? Kab chalu karoge brand?"
Right.
You're doing this. When will you start making money? All of that, and I actually knew in my mind that if I didn't understand mota broad spectrum of what the business is, and I'm not comfortable doing what I'm doing, I'm not going to start.
Right.
But we had already hired people. Money was being deployed. We had some consultants on board. We had our first or 1-2 employees on board, and I was like, we have to fund this at some stage. So obviously, I was under a lot of pressure to start.
Right.
So the concept became to kind of roast coffee fresh in a cafe every day, right? Every hour, and in small batches. So the concept became 500 grams at a time. We would do the roast the way you want it.
Right.
So if Suyog came to me and said, "Hey, I want this coffee to be roasted medium," then I would roast medium for you and give it to you within 15 minutes. So by the time you finish your cup of coffee,
Right.
you have freshly roasted coffee, packed, sealed, given to you. So then the natural extension of such freshness really literally became the word roasted today
Right.
or roasted every day came about. And that's what we actually named the brand. We called it Roasted Today because we wanted to roast every day, every hour, and start serving it to you as fresh as possible, right? It was a very enjoyable experience. I mean, a lot of people thought that was a very unique way of doing it. Again, I was very naive to think that was the correct business model, because that kind of business model was not meant to scale. It was definitely a great artisanal product. But can you make money off doing something like that, or doing just that? It's a bit difficult, right? Because the cost still of manpower still remain the same. So you can roast only 4 or 5 kgs a day max, or you can't roast more than that.
Yeah.
Also, I started realizing that coffee roasting is not as simple as it looks. You need to be. I think it requires a baker's precision or a surgeon's precision. For me now, I don't think there's so many people who come to me and tell me, "Hey, I want to roast coffee," and I was like, maybe you understand, maybe you don't understand, but for me, it is a craft that you choose for either the rest of your life or for a long period of time. Because I can't tell any roaster who is a master roaster till you don't spend about 20 or 30 years in this industry.
Right.
That's when you kind of become, because then you understand the nuances of every bean. You start, and so even I'm in a learning process even now.
Right.
And most of the other roasters in our country, we don't know what else the future holds, right? Because the third wave coffee roaster's job is not only to roast coffee, is to understand the terroir. It is to understand your farmer, to understand every single aspect, from the climate change to the farmer, to what is happening in that coffee roaster, to what the brewer is going to do.
Right.
You are responsible as a roaster to manage this entire value chain. Right. You're not part of the entire value chain. You're not going to be part of the farmer's life, day-to-day life. But to bring it to the right conclusion, you need to know everything, right? So it's just not roasting that you're learning. You're learning about terroir, you're learning about soil, you're learning about monsoon, you're learning about irrigation, you're looking about shade grind, processing, curing works, storing coffee when it comes to you, logistics, which is quite a pain in the ass in India, because weather just changes every 100 kilometers, right? Especially in season like this, So there's just so much that you have to learn as a roaster, and you're part of every single process from nature to technology. And I think that takes a long time to learn.
Yeah.
And so anyway, coming back to roaster today, that's how it kind of began, and then we very quickly realized that roaster today से मतलब पैसे नहीं बनने वाले. Roaster, you can't get like 30 roasters to people because they're highly, like I explained, why it's a highly technical job.
Yeah.
It's not that everybody can roast, or I can train anybody to roast. So we couldn't get that. So the scale wouldn't happen. That was quite demotivating, actually. That was the dip in that time, because the idea was very noble. The idea was very like, the idea was great to be able to do that. So we kind of went back to drawing board ki kya chahiye, kaise chahiye. So then by this thing happened, we bought a second roaster, right? Which was actually functioning. and we didn't burn the house down, which actually like worked like a proper roaster.
But you
It was
used the
electric.
Turkish roaster for a while?
No, so what happened is that we called up the Turk and we're like, "क्या बना है मेरे को, मतलब, what the fuck is this?" And the guy said, no, I understand, or whatever. He figured that we are guys who are here for the long run, and if he had to kind of screw with us, we would probably like take our Instagrams and social media and like, just. So he sent us a new roaster absolutely for free.
Okay.
Right. So I have both the roasters. He didn't even take the old roaster back. So that's there. Maybe someday I will showcase it somewhere, this roaster. It's a very beautiful looking roaster, actually. It's maroon and I'm going to maybe send pictures to you, so you can actually see what I mean. Maybe you want to put it up on this just for people to relate to this, right? So it's still there with me. I'll put it up someday somewhere. But yeah, we got the second roaster. Then we learned how to roast. It then became easier when I got the right roaster. But the important thing to know is that I learned how to control temperature on that machine, the older machine, the best.
Right.
Because you could not let the coffee reach a certain level, right? So it actually taught me control. So you learn from whatever you have, right? Your life gives you lemons. What do you do, right?
Nice.
So that kind of happened. So actually, on hindsight, I think I learned the hard way. And as being an old school dude, like in that aspect, I think it was a great thing, because you learned how to manage something when you didn't have the best, right? I didn't have the best ProBart roaster that was out there. I was not, it was not like I had a rich kid who had the money to buy the best and then learned on it, right? I literally had to kind of go from learning from something which was sold to me as a con artist job to then getting better and better equipment. So I really started valuing this new roaster.
Right.
It was a great value for me, and so we started roasting on that, and then Roasted Today had to kind of find a different way. Then we added a tagline because we wanted to also appeal to the younger audiences. So we can't. The word dope coffee was actually an experiment to see whether if we are, because we just felt like everybody else out there spoke a very bland language.
Right.
And since we've been part of culture culture and the culture of music and electronic music and indie music and all of that. We just felt that we could create a brand which would integrate all our interests, which are music, art, all of that, into how do I kind of mix it with this coffee brand that I have.
Right.
And then the tagline just happened to be Dope Coffee. So the Roasted Today Dope Coffee was a tagline.
Yeah.
And very, very, very soon, everybody forgot the word Roasted Today, and whoever was around us saying, "Arey, dope coffee." And in our case, we didn't name the brand. And the people who actually had our patrons started calling us Dope Coffee as opposed to Roasted Today. Right. So it just somehow became the brand.
Nice.
So it was just a natural cause. I had nothing to do with naming the brand, to be honest. I'm not a fully dope dude. Like, I don't dress a certain way. I don't skateboard. I don't like, I probably crack my skull if I do it. But yeah, like I said, the brand is of the people because they believe that this is dope coffee, and they said with a lot of conviction. So I said, hoga kuch.
Yeah.
It must be dope. So yeah, that's how it happened, man. That's how dope coffee happened. And then we were like, how do we differentiate ourselves? Again, how do we not look like other brands? Because many of the brands which are out there, which is just doing very similar packaging, either it was a white or black, or it was a brown paper bag, or it had this certain image
Yeah.
to third wave coffee, which was artisanal and all of that. We said that, hey, we need to kind of get some color into people's lives. Like, it is not just about the coffee, right? It's about the experience.
Right.
And what better way to kind of stitch our art, our people, the artists that we knew because of the restaurants and so on and so forth. How do I kind of get them in and get them involved? So we kind of reached out to street artists who would make art for us, and we got colorful bags like red, yellow, and black.
So I think when it comes to third wave coffee, I've seen the storytelling bit has been a powerful messaging all over the globe, especially like where the coffee comes from, how they're doing it. There is a certain brand identity, and as we said, dope coffee has a really strong brand identity.
Yeah.
So can you describe us like how the journey was? What was the process behind it? Though you mentioned a couple of bits about keeping it different than what is out there.
Right.
But how did you incorporate all those music and graphic and artist and all those elements inside? And what was the process like where it stands right now?
So coffee, third wave coffee is actually quite a complicated, process to understand, right? Because a lot of people are still like finding out about, especially in a country like ours, you have to understand that there have been so many years of colonialism, is that we've been deprived of our own magical produce for years, right? So even where tea is concerned, like what you drink now as chai is actually CTC dust, and this all started from like I don't know whether it started from the Mughals or it started from the East India Company. I'm not too sure about when this happened, but I know for a fact that the East India Company just exported everything that we grew, right? And we the best of the best. I mean,
Right.
it was the production wasn't like that high for Indians also to consume, and also they'd taken it up to such a high level that Indians could not really afford it because for whatever reasons. And or they just didn't want Indians to afford it. I don't know what the story was, but I know for a fact that our best produce was stolen from us and sent abroad. So what started happening is that we as Indians, at somewhere along the line, just got comfortable drinking or consuming products which are not up to the mark where
Right.
quality was concerned. I think Indian cuisine is a cuisine where, like, if you go to Italy, and there's a reason why I'm saying this story, so please bear with me, right? If you go to Italy, you can have a tomato, some fresh mozzarella, some oil, some sea salt, some pepper, and that can become a dish, right? We can't afford to do that, right? We couldn't. We had, because the produce was not, because that's when a country is saying, hey, look at my produce, I'm proud of it, here you go, right? This is the right kind of, this is the way we eat my produce. We had to ended up using masalas and spices and mirchi and what all not to make a cuisine happen, for the simple reason is that the produce was not great. So we had to add
Right.
flavors to make the food taste anywhere close to edible, right? That's how bad the scenario was, and this is that was actually quite a sad scenario, and that problem still persists today because we've got so used to consuming bad produce that when new produce comes in, either we find it to be too expensive and not value for money, or we are like, no, we are okay with drinking whatever, right? Whereas coffee is a product which is which belongs to India. We produce it. We are the 7th largest producers of coffee,
Right.
and not just any coffee. We are the producer of the most highest quality beans that the world has to offer. We are no less than a Colombia. We are no less than Ethiopia, I think. Right? Yes, we have to do some technological advancements, and we are working on it. But I think that is the only country in the world where all your coffee is grown in the shade. That is a very big thing. That means not only are we a great coffee nation, right, but we are also sustainable, right? Because there's an ecosystem around it. If you go to Brazil, you will not find shade-grown coffee, right? You won't find other things growing around it. You won't see silver oak trees and jackfruit trees and pepper and all of that growing in the same. It was the cross-pollination of produce in this country is so great, and this is our motherland, right? We had to think of innovative ways to make people consume your own coffee, right? That is how it actually started. How do I make this non-intimidating for you, right? How do I make this non-intimidating for anybody looking at the shelf, right? And that's when the branding really comes in, because we didn't want to scare people away by saying, hey, your coffee will taste like gooseberries, dragon fruit, and pineapple, where people are like, what does that even mean? Like, how can coffee even taste like that?
Right.
So we had to find an innovative way to kind of bring people into the fold, to make them try, right? And I am a total believer of, like, if I have to introduce somebody to specialty coffee via filter copy, so be it, right? Yes, of course, I will not add chicory. I will not, do all of that. But I can do 100% or 80-20 coffee and introduce somebody to specialty coffee. They can taste the difference.
Right.
The same way, branding is a very, very important part, right? Because you're removing the intimidation from the thing. You're drinking something which is super special. You're drinking something which is ranked 85 plus at a specialty coffee standard coffee, right? So the branding was really meant to do two things. One is to make you feel very comfortable and not intimidated by what you're holding in your hand. Two was to, of course, empower and work with other cultures, right? Like artists, like street artists that we use to kind of work with a brand. We are working with newer artists now, and what we do is, it's a very cool thing, right? I think it's very cool.
I agree.
It's cool to be able to take a artist, right, a graphic artist, a farmer, and a roaster, sitting doing something like this now, right? In the next few weeks, I'll be doing this, and the graphic designer is going to be telling the farmer their story. The farmer is going to be telling the graphic designer their story,
right?
And I will be kind of sitting there and saying, hey, this is what I want for my coffee roaster. I mean, when would you even think that would have been possible, where somebody who's a tech geek meets a farmer and meets somebody who's trying to just mediate their entire amalgamation? It's a very beautiful thing. It's a very powerful thing for me, at least, right? And that's just my trip, man. That's just my trip in life, to be able to make people talk to each other who would have never met in ordinary circumstances, would have no connection with each other, right? And then the graphic designer is actually listening to the farmer's story, using their art and their culture to kind of perceive the farm for what it is, and then putting it on a bag. I think I think that's beautiful, and that process itself for us, I think that is the biggest takeaway. That's when we are having the most amount of fun, right? Because that's when creativity levels are like right up there. And with a brand like Dope, you can do that. You can launch limited edition coffees and do this process over and over again, so it never gets boring, even for us, right? Because at the end of the day, when you're running a business, monotony does come in somewhere, and you need to scale that monotony, because people always are coming back for the same consistency. When you're doing an F&B brand or a FMCG brand, if your product doesn't taste as consistent, you will probably not, you'll not retain a customer. But the beauty about coffee is that what we are saying is that coffee is not going to taste the same in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 21. It will have a slight difference because it's a natural product.
Yeah.
right? And that is the USP of third wave coffee, right? It is not going to taste the same. You can take the same coffee, dial in different recipes, and taste multiple different things.
Yeah.
All right. So we want people to make the coffee their own,
Yeah.
and that's when our packaging really like comes in and it becomes your character and your thing, and
Yeah.
it is a great product to have on a breakfast table. Like,
Yeah.
you have all these stark things that you look at in the morning. Everything looks the same. When you look at dope coffee in the morning, amongst your ketchup bottle and your, I call it a breakfast product to begin with, right?
Yeah.
It is first thing that you think of is breakfast,
Yeah.
right? What a conversation starter it is to have a bag like that on your kitchen or on, when you're hosting people.
Yeah.
It's just a conversation starter. Ye kya hai? What is this? Why does this bag look like this? Why is it so outrageous? Why is it so, whatever the conversation is, right? Some
Yeah.
people, some grandmothers look at me, they'll be like, they're like, oh shit, like what is this? There's some devil in there. I've had, some of my friends' fathers and mothers have like told me, hey, look, this is from the 60s or the 70s, and that was the hippie generation, right? Our generation tends to believe that we are the biggest hipsters and the biggest hippies on the planet, but that's wrong, because the 1970s was actually psychedelic in nature.
Yeah.
And they probably know a thing or two more about psychedelia than us.
Right.
And obviously they hid it very well from us. But actually they knew it all. So we had people saying that, hey, this is psychedelic and this is my generation.
Yeah.
Ye mera generation ka hai. And that gave us more confidence that it was not just for like the 16 to 35-year-olds. I mean, because when you're making a brand, you have to keep those things in mind, right?
Yeah.
Like,
True.
because at the end of the day, the product is something that is had by all age groups. Are we? So there were those concerns also. Are we alienating ourselves? Are we like, alienating from the consumer?
Yeah.
Will the consumer just not buy it because it's called dope, right? That was a very big fear for us. But the universe is kind, and I think everybody has taken up to the branding, and they look forward to new releases. They look forward to new limited editions.
Yeah.
They do find the flavor. They find their sweet spot. Like, I am to believe that you like this coffee from us called Nilgiri.
Yeah.
But if we launch a limited edition and we shoot you an email, you will probably be keen to try a newer flavor from us or newer coffee from us.
I
So
think-
that's it.
Yeah, I think you brought a couple of points which were really interesting. I think the whole third wave coffee, which is close to the stakeholders as it can get, and how you can directly talk to the farmers, see the whole life cycle of the thing, make some collaborations happen. Those are like the interesting bits for sure. And coming from like the service design background, we are usually bringing different stakeholders in a co-creation stuff and playing around with them and making them have conversations. And I think you doing this activity is also interesting from the brand storytelling perspective, from the coffee storytelling perspective, from the consumer side. What I've faced is, or what I've realized from my experiences, whenever there is a nice story to tell from your end, it's easier for me also to tell that story to other people who are coming at my home, my friends. And that thing happened with the one special edition or limited edition you did with the tribal people from Odisha.
Yes.
And that had a
Yes, we
story to tell, and even I could tell that story while brewing the coffee for my friend, and that adds the
Absolutely.
additional element, and that also makes me buy that coffee first when I see it, irrespective of the taste, because taste I can then see once it's in my hand, but what I can see up front without having coffee in my hand is the story and where it comes from. So those have been really very interesting.
Tribal
bits.
Koraput is actually one of the coffees I'm really, really proud of. I think that, again, we'll send some pictures over on what this is, because Koraput is a very neglected region. Many, that's the one. Yeah. So that's actually the cannonball flower, one that you're looking at. The design for that is actually the cannonball flower, which is the national flower of Odisha. To be honest, so that's the story that we want to kind of tell through this,
Right.
And it's also like very native to Odisha. So you don't find it everywhere,
Right.
and that's the story we want to tell with that design. It was actually contrary to all our other designs. That was actually very minimalistic.
Yeah.
For the simple reason is that that story was minimalistic.
Right.
The coffee is so powerful.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the better coffees, and that coffee is actually not a specialty coffee. By rating standards, right?
Okay.
It is not a specialty coffee because not being graded by a Q grader, it's not being graded by some fancy ass dude saying that, this is the coffee to have or whatever. It's not that, right? It's like when you go to Italy again, Italian, because you were there, so it's like Parmigiano Reggiano, or it is like Emiligrana, or like any other region which grows the same cheese or produces the same cheese,
Right.
but doesn't get the DOA approval because they don't have the money to buy these certifications,
Right.
right? And as specialty coffee roasters, I think that is also a question that we need to ask ourselves, right? Is everything all about 85 plus? Can it just be that the coffee is dope? Does it have to be 85 plus? Does it have to be graded by a Q grader? Do we have to spend all this money, or make the farmer, because the farmer needs to pay all this money
Right.
first to get that coffee graded, right? Do we want to tax the farmer with that, or just be like, dude, this coffee just tastes great.
Yeah.
Like, this should be out there. So that's the thing about this coffee, right?
But
It's
do
not
you-
graded by anybody.
But do you see
Yeah.
a change in the behavior depending on the grading of the coffee from the consumer side that people tend to buy? Because I myself haven't seen the gradings. Which
Yeah,
I'm
so
thinking
like
right
I said, yeah, so that's the thing, right? That many coffee roasters do put the grading out there. We don't believe that. When we say specialty, it also means you have to broaden your horizons. It's the processing, right, of the coffees. How much care that farmer has taken to kind of pick that coffee for you. That makes it special. How much care we've taken to store that coffee, to roast that coffee in a certain way. We've wasted batches away
Right.
just to find the right flavor,
Right.
right? That's a loss to us. We don't necessarily. And one thing unique about dope coffee roasters is that, and a lot of the roaster friends of mine think that I'm stupid or crazy, is that I actually don't roast on a sample roaster first. Whenever I have a sample roaster where I do cupping, because usually what you do is you have a sample roaster. Many farms will send you coffees. You'll taste those coffees after you roast them on a sample roaster, and then kind of find a way to replicate on the bigger roaster. I actually call for larger batches and roast on the big roaster first.
Okay.
It's a key difference between the way I do things and other people. Everybody's got their own
Yeah.
way of things. So I actually end up roasting a 8 kg batch for sampling.
Right.
And I do
Wow.
at least 4 of them. So that's 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8.
Yes.
And that coffee, I can't even release it as anything because I've not found the right flavor. So
Right.
what do you do with it? And I'm going to keep it a secret of what we do with that coffee, but we don't sell it to you. So don't worry, we don't throw it out either.
No,
so
I think with the
that's
right
that's-
story, I would buy that as well.
Was that?
With the right storytelling, I would buy that as well.
Yeah, I think that we probably like actually we go to our closest customers and be like, hey, listen, we have this. मतलब आपको चाहिए तो आप बताओ. We'll give it to you at a certain price, and that's that's something that we do for our regulars, our day-to-day people who we are in touch with and who engage with us. But eventually, we do get it out to the people after we've done this process. So. That is special. So that is specialty coffee, right?
Right.
And that's why we don't write it on our bags about how what this coffee is rated at, and I don't see the point.
Right.
Although SCA or Specialty Coffee Association does define specialty coffee as this, specialty coffee to me and to dope coffee means the effort, the special processes that are done to the coffee
Right.
for it to taste great, right? For me, it is very simple.
Right.
Either it tastes good and makes you happy, right? Or it tastes shit and doesn't make you feel happy, right? It's as simple for me, and that's dope coffee for you. If you
Right.
like it, consume it. If you don't, move on to the next.
Right. No, makes sense. And with this, how do you see the Indian scene growing now? Because as now I shared with you last time when we talked, I see a lot of different roasters coming in the picture, especially on my Instagram feed with promotional posts. I see new names. And how do you see this scene growing? And what is your point of view, and how do you see dope in that future? And how do you perceive it right now?
I think that we are in the beginning of the boom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very confident that because we see so many dope coffee roasters, as in for us, we are not catering just to those 10-20,000 people who like specialty coffee. We are actually expanding the horizons for the entire coffee roaster community at large, right? Because it is a much more approachable brand, right? So I'll probably the first contact. I call my brand the first contact brand for Third Wave Coffee because, I think either we were not rolling or we were rolling this camera. You made mention of Cred. So Cred is actually one of the platforms where we introduce the larger audience to specialty coffee. तो जाने ना अनजाने में वो स्पेशलिटी कॉफ़ी पी रहे हैं और उनको फिर वो ऑटोमेटिक समझ में आ जाता है कि अच्छा ये तो मतलब अलग चीज़ है, right? And that's essentially what we are. We are the first contact brand, and we do see people trickling into other coffee roasters, and the funneling of those people is very, very different. And this is what we encourage. One thing about specialty coffee roaster, and if you're truly a specialty coffee roaster from your heart and not just the words that you speak, you would encourage your audiences to try different roasters. I would tell you to go try things from multiple roasters, and I would probably talk about it as well. I would say that, hey, listen, this particular coffee from Blue Tokai is exceptional, whereas Sabco Coffee Roasters, for example, does another coffee which is much more fantastic, which I learned from, right? I like the way they perceive that particular coffee and release that particular coffee. So that's the quality of specialty coffee roasters. As of now, we are a very strongly knit community. The competition is there, of course. There is competition, but I think that we are kind of talking so much to each other that the competition just like is an unsaid conversation that we have when we all meet, right? Just yesterday, I actually day before yesterday on Sunday, I was hanging out with Matt and Rahul Reddy, who's from Blue Tokai. Matt, like I said, is the father of Third Wave Coffee, and Rahul Reddy is probably the biggest disruptor with Sabco Coffee. So we don't talk about that. We don't talk about क्या होगा कॉफी में. Our concerns are that boss Arabica की मौत हो रही है, right? Arabica is dying as a commodity is dying. Sorry, and it's a very scary scenario, right? So although we do like coffee roasters to be coming into the fold, and we invite them, I think every city should have multiple roasters, right? भगवान करे सबको अच्छा business मिले, and everybody survives and everybody comes to fruition, but it is a very difficult business. It is not an easy business. It is a perishable product, especially when you set such high standards for quality for the guest or the final consumer. It is a very, very difficult business to survive in, and because now you're spoiled for choice, you can't get away with. And this is a warning to the ones who are entering the business. You can't get away with bullshitting the customer, right? And you have to be very true to the cause, because your seniors in the industry have done a good job. They've put the best foot forward, and I hope that people continue following this legacy of I think the competition should be on quality as opposed to being, hey, I'm going to sell this coffee for 400, this guy sells it for 425, right? And that's a market which I don't enjoy, but I do enjoy when people are fighting for quality. And I think India should be there. It should be the future where people, you'll have a few bad apples. Just the other day, one of my coffee estate farmers were telling me about some coffee roaster who was imitating some name of their estate when they had not bought it from there. I think that's a very sad thing to kind of do. That's not the right way to do this, because a lot of effort has gone in to making. So my advice, or if this reaches anybody who wants to enter the coffee roasting industry, is that, dude, there is enough and more for everybody. There's a market which is booming. People are understanding about coffee roasting, coffee processing, so on and so forth. There's going to be enough for everybody. Don't do something which will shame the third wave coffee roaster community, and that's probably my only message to the upcoming restaurateurs.
Right. And Rizwan, what do you think about the relationship which you guys develop with farmers and the estates, and how do you see that happening? Because that has also been a very interesting bit personally for me as a coffee drinker, because I can say where the coffee came from and know more about the estate even if I look them up online. So how do you perceive that, and how do you also see new farmers coming into the business of specialty or processing coffees?
Yeah, no. So definitely, it's the biggest sourcing for any business is the most important thing, right? Any product that you do, and for us, luckily for us, it is actually farmers that are, that we get to interact with, because they are so welcoming. They're so excited when they see their coffee names, their coffee estate names on brand bags. I mean, 5 to 10 years ago, they would not even imagine, because what would happen 5 to 10 years ago is that all these farmers had these bigger companies come pick up their coffee, mix it all in, and make a very big batch and export it, right? So nobody would ever know where their coffee was landing up, who was drinking the coffee. There was no way to find out feedback. The only feedback was given by the middlemen, and they could just say their coffee is shit and we won't pay you that much for your coffee. And they had to fly with that. They had no other option. They had no other way to. So all they could do is go sell it out in the market, right? I think third wave coffee has changed that for them drastically, and luckily for us, they are on the same wave length. Although, I think when I entered the industry, about 90% of the coffee was being exported. I think now it's become 85 or 80%, somewhere there, which is still a great thing. 15% consumption has improved for Indian estate farmers.
Right.
So I think that the relationship is very sacred. It's one that is built on trust and on faith, right? That we would do justice. It's actually quite a lot of pressure for the coffee estate owner, for the coffee roaster, to live up to that expectation, because now you're not just selling the coffee in your name, your brand name, but it's also the coffee estate name that is involved, and that's a. The first time I roast coffee, it's always the same nervous feeling. It's always when I'm dishing out a new, it's never. I never get like comfortable with that release. I'm always on the edge. I'm always like waiting for feedback to come in, waiting for what you have to say about that coffee, so I can relay that back to the coffee roaster. Because as third wave guys, we also act as a connector between the farmer and the audiences, right? So although the audiences may not be able to give, we're trying to see how they can probably get, but usually whatever feedback we get in, whether way of email or when you go to a website and kind of click the stars, or just talk about it on your Instagram, that's the best way of gauging what's happening, how much people post about it. We are excited to give that data back to the farmer. Usually we kind of end up looking at how we roast the coffee. When feedback comes in, we try to make our own amends if there is a negative feedback that comes in. But if there is something which is really off, probably would not leave the roaster or the roasting area anyway. Moving forward, the relationship is going to get more and more tighter. We should be able to also take our consumers now to coffee estates. I think that is something which I've been wanting to do for a very long time. Unfortunately, these 2 years was impossible to do something like this, but it would be great to take our regulars, people like you, who have a certain coffee that you're fixated with. If you get to go back to that coffee estate, that journey is complete. And, that is the next step for me in terms, because then I'm also, most of these farmers also have homestays. They have infrastructure, because they can't just survive on coffee growing and pepper growing. They need other sources of income, and obviously tourism is quite big in those regions. It's just that there are certain resorts or homestays which are more famous than these guys, and I think if we can start developing that aspect for them also, it kind of finishes the entire journey. You understand the terroir of the coffee that you're drinking. You're completely connected end to end with that coffee estate as a consumer of that coffee estate. And you kind of empower the farmers to get another additional source of income. We get to be on coffee estates on your money. So that's brilliant. You guys are sweet. People who buy our coffees enable us to be in the wilderness for some months or a year. So I'm very grateful for that because it is actually my natural place. Like this place feels a little unnatural to me the moment I come back from coffee estates, because you're just disconnected. Most of the places, sometimes networks don't work. You only have BSNL that works, and you have to go to a certain point, and you're risking yourself because there could be an animal there to pounce on you. So most of the estates are quite in the wilderness, but that's not where I'm going to take you, Suyog. Only if this podcast sounds bad or looks bad is when I'll take you to those estates. But if you do a good job, then I'll take you to a estate which is very, very safe, right? And that's that. I think for me, the relationship with the farmer is the most sacred relationship, and I hope that I never ever disappoint them in any which way, because they've seen quite a lot, and they continue to see a lot more. Things that we are completely shielded with. We just enjoy a cup of coffee or roast a cup of coffee, but they have to battle with monsoon, global warming, labor. They risk their lives sometimes with snakes and leeches, and there's so much out there which they risk themselves with. Of course, they've got better with time to protect themselves. Of course, I'm not saying that they don't have any protection. Right. In fact, when we buy specialty coffee, as you know, is the second highest traded commodity in the world after crude oil. So of course it's a very as a commodity it's up there, right? It's the king of all commodities, but it's also traded as some shitty rates on your New York Stock Exchange and London Stock Exchange. So how we end up, for us, those prices don't matter, right? So if coffee is trading at $1.20, we end up paying the $3.5 per kilo. So they're protected and shielded from any of this market going up, down, fluctuating. We don't want them to worry about any of that, right? We don't want the farmers to worry about what happens on the stock exchange. We just want them to do what they do best. And we want them to up the quality. Of course, we want them to up the quality. Nonetheless, I mean, there are, certain estates, and I've never ever spoken about this before, and I didn't understand it earlier, but there are certain estates, which probably have practices which are there for centuries, but it is not in our kind of coordinates. Like, for example, if I see, so elephants are a very, very big thing in coffee estates. It's actually for us, for people who live in the city, elephant is a beautiful creature, and it looks good on National Geographic, and you go like, oh, baby elephant, and you just want to pet it. But in reality, they're very, very protective of their smaller baby lot, and they are dime a dozen because they're protected. They are protected species, and I love it that they are protected in India. They do enter the coffee estate as a menace for coffee estate owners. For them, it is a menace because they come in there for the jackfruit. Right. The elephants love jackfruit, by the way. For them, that's their dope, right? It's like they're addicted to jackfruit. Specialty jackfruit. Exactly. And they come in for that jackfruit, and sometimes they're just passing through the coffee estate. And what is happening then is that they're destroying a lot of the plants. They're destroying a lot of because they don't have a pathway, right? They create their own pathway. And if they have a baby elephant around, they even get more protective. So some estates have something called elephant ranches, which is a very sad thing, because they're probably on the main road, or which means that before the estate starts, there is a big ditch which is covered with like just patta and all of that. And and if you see an elephant herd, it usually is a baby is always a little ahead. So the baby actually falls in first before they enters the estate, and then a bigger elephant falls, and then they get stuck so that the elephants don't move forward. I don't know what to say to these coffee estates, but we are not going to support those estates, no matter how good their coffee is. And I think this is something that nobody talks about, and I would like to be the first one to talk about it. Like, elephant ranches are not cool. And I know it comes at a cost of your crop being destroyed, but nothing is more valuable than naturally. It is their natural habitat also, and I feel very, very strongly for elephant ranches, and I've been doing this entire movement. You may not hear of it, people may not hear of it, but in my own way, because we have the power to pick up coffee from these coffee estates, we kind of just let those coffee estates go if they don't follow those guidelines.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting. Because it's not only about the fair trade, but beyond that, and how the ecosystem is being affected by the actions. But you get to do something about it. That is also important with this.
Yeah, I mean, fair trade to purani baat ho gayi, right?
Right.
Fair trade is no longer the question. Direct trade with farmers is no longer a question. I think that should be done anyway.
Right.
And that's why as Dope, we don't necessarily talk about that. I see so many brands like talking about it, which is very good. I think education is very, very important. But for us, third, for Dope Coffee and for me personally, I think that direct trade, fair trade is a must. Like, I don't want to like go ahead and talk about it like till kingdom come home, because it just should be done anyway. Right? Fair trade practices should be done anyway. So
nice. Yeah, because when you say specialty coffee, fair trade comes as an element which is inside there.
Exactly.
Interesting. Now bringing back the conversation to hyper local. Now we talked a bit about sustainability. Let's talk about hyper local scenario where not necessarily every roaster would scale to provide coffee for a larger audience. What is your opinion about that? Because you had pointed this out when we were doing a catch-up call, and hyper local roasteries and cafes. Like, how do you picture them, especially in our Indian context right now?
So I think hyper-local coffee roasteries, if you go to the south of India, it's quite a common thing, right? It's not a new concept to them. Like, if you go to Mysore, it's actually one of the places that I'd gone to earlier to actually find a coffee roaster, an Indian-made coffee roaster. Obviously, I had no luck. Our technology is just not advanced. So now I use a German-made roaster. But I did this whole exploration. Mysore doesn't really grow its own coffee or any of that, except for Chamundi Hills. There is some, but it's not very significant. I noticed a very interesting thing. Like, every bazaar had its own coffee roaster. It is still a very, it's not like a city really. So there is that whole thing about, mostly women are taking care of the homes there in terms of, they're not really working, but they're taking care of the house, and they end up coming to the markets every day to buy their fresh produce or whatever. And I noticed that what they would do is very interesting. They would actually come to the coffee roaster first. They can customize the entire roast. They have like 6-7 beans, and then every family has their own blend.
Wow.
It's that serious, right? Like, every grandmother, every mother has के इतना % पी बेर डालो, इतना % ये डालो, आधे किलो में आपको 10 ग्राम ये डालना है, 20 ग्राम ये डालना है, 30 ग्राम ये डालना है.
It's like making masala.
Exactly. It is that. It is nothing less than that. It is that. And every family has their own flavor profile. If they're not roasting coffee in their own house, that is.
Right.
Some families also end up doing that, right? And the women of the house, or whoever's buying the vegetables for that particular day, or the produce for that particular day, they would actually come in and give this order, go pick up everything else that they have to pick up in the market, and then come back when the coffee is freshly roasted, freshly ground, freshly blended for the family for 2 days.
Okay.
Or 3 days. That's all that they pick up. They don't pick up coffee for 15 days, 20 days, 30 days, like that.
Right.
It's an everyday affair. And that's the seriousness of that in the culture, right? So we can say third wave, and you can say all this fancy thing, but where freshness is concerned, which is the primary objective of specialty coffee, these people have been doing it way longer than we have, right?
Right.
So we should not be in any illusion ke this hyper-local scenario. So, but I would like that to happen in the modern specialty coffee scene as well, right? Where people come to me, maybe they pick up some of my coffee, maybe they pick up some of somebody else's coffee, blend that together, make a blend for yourself. I think that for me, that will be the day of the ultimate job satisfaction.
Right.
When you end up making something which belongs to you, I think single estate and all that is fine, like single origin, obviously fine, but that doesn't mean that it cannot be blended and made to something even better.
Yeah.
Because that is the whole purpose of blending, right? And I'm not one of those who think that single estate and single origin is the most ultimate thing to drink coffee. Absolutely not. Blending has its own power. It's like blended scotch or blended whiskey or whatever, right? It is meant for a reason. Because sometimes 2 + 2 makes a 4, and 4 is better than 2. Right. So in that sense, where economy is concerned, of course, the same way, right? That you would want to kind of explore that, and that would be a future that I really look forward to. I in fact pray for it every single day. We become that culture which supports our local roastery business, and it's very, very important. It's very, 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 very important.
With that, Rizwan, how do you see dope coffee or the future of dope coffee, and also roasted today coffee, if you have some plans with that? Because I remember you saying some little things here and there, but how do you see
want
the
a
vision?
secret?
Up to you.
You want a business secret, don't you? Okay. So I think Dope Coffee will be a lifestyle-based coffee brand. I think just the way the branding is, I think we can work a lot with merchandise. Work ourselves. We necessarily don't want to be constricted to just coffee. In that sense, we would like dope is meant for everything that can be dopified. We will do, right? So if I can make a soft serve ice cream dope, I will probably do it. Coffee was the most hardest part, so we did that first. But yeah, I mean, sky's the limit in terms of products that we can probably do. But we do want to master each product before we move on to the next. And I think we want to become masters of that before. And it's called Radical Focus. It's something I really, really believe in. You guys should read the book, Radical Focus, for everybody who's listening.
Yeah.
It's a great book. And it's very, very important to be able to master certain things about certain businesses before you move forward. Because it teaches you a lot for the future any which way. So I think merchandise would definitely be one of them. I've always had a love for other products like maybe chocolate or something of those lines, but merchandise for sure. We would also like to start our own little podcast and our own little thing, because we believe there are a lot of people who are dope. So we would like to do a dope people or people who are dope podcast and invite people over who we think are dope for whatever accomplishments that they have done, or how they've changed the world for better, or just their existence is dope, right? So that's something that we really, really want to do. We think we will collaborate a lot more with newer artists and limited edition coffees. So maybe have a different design language, right? Right now we are chunkier, more more character based, but we would like to explore the whole minimalistic side of things. We would like to explore minimalist artists for that matter.
Right.
So lots in store, man. Lots in store. Exciting times. Unfortunately, these 2 years, all our aspirations of doing cool stuff is kind of going on the back burner. The idea is just to survive.
Yeah.
And I would like to listen to this conversation 10 years from now, actually, because these are the most hardest times for any brand. The pandemic is not easy for any brand to survive. So I think that now is the time that we start activating that and start working with different artists and on different merchandise. What was the other question? The second part to this question was
the roasted today coffee plans, if you have.
Oh, yeah. So it's been my dream to only do 85 plus coffees. And with this, I'm kind of making a confession of some sorts that I may activate that to only do coffees which are 85 plus, which will be roasted in very small batches, 1 kilo or not even 1 kilo, 500 grams. So bring the roasted today thing back, but roasted for you fresh. So the coffee will only be roasted once you order. You will have a larger waiting time to consume that coffee. So we would like the consumer to place the order, wait, few days before we start roasting it, and then you receiving it. And it's basically meant for anybody who takes the coffee super, super seriously and wants to really, really explore different newer coffees and doesn't mind waiting for it. Like it is not a necessity product. It's more of a connoisseur's, or if you could want to call it that, product.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that if you're new to coffee, you can't try it. You can definitely try 85 plus coffees, even if you're starting out. But usually a lot more technical. Like we'll make specific based coffee, right? So right now we say that, hey, it's okay to have a Kalladevra Pura estate in a French press, in a pour over, in a AeroPress. But we would probably make a coffee just for a pour over.
Right.
We'd probably not sell it ground at all. So that is kind of making a statement. That means you need to have a grinder at home to grind your coffee with, because that's how it's best consumed.
Right.
So we will probably not give you the option of calling for ground coffee in that sense. So it's going to be an advanced level to coffee. In that we do have a limited editions in dope coffee as well, which are super special. But I think this is an ode to not only Roasted Today as a brand, but also to specialty coffee consumers for whom this is a passion. And this is almost a religion of some sorts,
right.
which is for me, right? I drink coffee from all over the planet. So yeah, and that it also gives us the liberty to roast some international coffees as well.
Right.
Get some smaller batches from international coffee roasters, because we are doing a bit for Indian coffee roaster through Dope, but people should be able to taste coffees from different regions, different terroirs. That just kind of variety is the spice of life, right? So you should be able to do that.
Right.
Not that we don't love our Indian farmers. Our objective will always be it's like IPL, right? You have 70% of or 60% of your team which is Indian, to give them the exposure, but you also do that 40% to get international talent. So same way we would like to introduce those in smaller batches so people could try, and also we become better roasters so that we also understand it. So whenever Dope Coffee does move abroad, which it will, most definitely we will export this brand. We get ready for what the international markets also have to offer us.
Interesting. And just out of curiosity, as we see this future for you as a brand, if we talk about consumers, or let's say people who drink coffee like us, what are some of the things you would recommend to go on the journey? Because you talked about a part where some people who are like extremely passionate, you can have something for them made in a smaller batches through Roasted Today. But how about the usual people? How do you see their journey? As that could also be very interesting for people who are kind of new into drinking coffee or drinking specialty coffee, who just explored it. Just wanted your kind of 2 cents on that.
So we are going to be introducing much more easy to drink methods. We'd be doing an easy pour. We would be probably doing some cold brew in a bottle or a can. So it's more accessible for people, which is brewed in a specialty manner. But it is more on the ready to drink, ready to consume category. I think it's very important that we do that. I think that another category which is very, very important to consider, and that would be probably the different wave of coffee, would be specialty instant. That's a category that I'm really gunning for. Doing a lot of research on this. Again, as long as it falls in line with our ethics and our idea of rolling out specialty coffee, and it's small batch. It's not one of those large batched one size fits all kind of a thing. Every specialty instant coffee would require certain tweaks. So I think that is also a future, because when you travel, when right now you have to carry things or equipments, and I'm not saying that instant coffee, I don't know, maybe it will taste as good, maybe it will not taste as good as your fresh roasted coffee, but at least we can work towards getting you a coffee which is, when you go to a hotel, you don't drink that black in carbon, which will probably give you cancer. They don't clean the machines. Yeah, man, like some of these machines are not cleaned, and I don't know if I want to break the magician's code here, but carbon is carcinogenic, right? And so it's something that you can carry with you, maybe on a bike ride, maybe on a cycle ride, maybe on a trek. And it's a specialty. You still follow the same ethics and rules that you would generally go by when you consume something. So yeah, that's that.
Interesting. Cool. And any words of wisdom through your experience so far of building things, building company, building brands, building a culture around it, for, let's say, budding entrepreneurs, people who want to build stuff and get into business, and startups for that matter? Anything which you would like to share with them in terms of learning or whatever?
I think that the younger lot of entrepreneurs have a thing or two to teach us, as opposed to, I think experience and age is also a blocker to think big and dream big. The more experience you get, the lesser your risk-taking abilities. But I think that never stop doing that. Never stop taking risks. Never stop dreaming big. And dream as big as you can, right? Because you'll definitely, when you slingshot, if you do a larger slingshot, or you you'll land somewhere closer to there than you'll land closer to here. Just don't shoot straight up, right? Don't think that you're going to be Blue Tokai in one day. That's not going to happen. It's a hard-earned industry. But like everything else, dream big, believe in yourself, believe in whatever, and passion. I think stop doing anything which you don't get excited waking up to and saying that, hey, I'm going to, like, sometimes I wonder how chartered accountants wake up in the morning and be like, yeah, I'm going to go look at more, like, I don't know how they do that, but there are people who are passionate about it. People who are passionate about, like, doing this. So whatever your field is, but everybody is not lucky. Everybody is not lucky enough to wake up and say, I will pursue my dreams and my goals and my ambitions. And to them, I would like to say that build a corpus, use that time. If you have a passion, you can't pursue it right now, whatever may be the constraint. Maybe it is family, maybe it is earning pressures, maybe whatever you're aiming to do is not going to pay you back immediately. Work towards it every single day, thinking that you're going to achieve it. Because if you are able to do something else, to build a corpus of some sort, to start whatever, and you pursue it with a passion, things will open up for you. And that's my advice to people who can't possibly do what they love at this stage. Gun for it. Keep that in mind. Keep it as a goal. Nonetheless, you will get there. Just build your corpus.
Right. Awesome. Amazing things. I think we had a wonderful conversation started from like really diving into the coffee industry and the specialty coffee and the third wave coffee of India, how you started, how the dope coffee came to be, where it's going to go, like the vision in the future, and also some amazing suggestions for budding entrepreneurs and other people who might be in the industry or might not be in the industry. That's all good. I think I had a lot of fun, learned a lot of things, got me excited in some of the aspects of like the collaboration with farmers and all those things were really, really interesting. And they got me thinking. So that was interesting as well. with that, I would like really thank you for taking out time and coming on the podcast and sharing amazing things with us, and also enlighten us on the whole coffee topic. Super duper
I
amazing
do as
and
much as I
interesting.
can, and just sharing the knowledge that I have achieved. Still a long way for me to go, and thank you so much for having me. Like I said in the beginning, and say it now again, that I'm more excited to speak to people who are actually excited about the product that I'm serving, as opposed to just like yapping away. I think the conversation was much more interesting for me as well, because you kind of understand coffee to a certain degree. So thank you for listening to all the crap that I had to say.
No. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and it's good to hear that you also enjoyed it. So
I did.
that's a win-win. With that, where do you want people to come and look for you if they want to have a conversation?
Do I have to? I
It's
can.
up to you.
I'm dope. I'm quite introvertish. I'm just letting you know. I don't do this on an everyday level. But hey, if it's coffee related, I'm quite approachable on Instagram. Please ask away. And even for people who are younger, who want to get into coffee roasting, don't know where to start. I could probably give you what I can't probably tell you what you can do right, but I can tell you what I did wrong. And
Right.
I think that's a good conversation to have on Instagram. And if I find you're not a flaky serial killer-ish type of a person, I will probably give you my number. But yeah, I think Instagram is a great place to catch up with me. And of course, Dope Coffee is the
Yeah.
most active on Instagram. So most of our limited editions and all of that we kind of announce over there. So
All right.
whenever you do feel like it, please do check us out over there.
Yeah, and also visit the website of Dope Coffee because it has been done very well.
Oh, thank you.
And it also, it brings the right message and the vibe of the brand.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Super.
Thank you so much.
So that's all from this particular episode. I had a lot of fun recording this, having the conversation with Rizwan. I learned a lot of things. As I said, some of the things also got me very, very excited. And I hope you also found some sort of value through our conversation. And if you did, we will be super duper happy about that. With that said, that's all from our side. If you are interested more in such conversation, don't forget to follow Daily Ish Pod on all the podcasting apps where you are listening to the podcast. And also come to the Fun Indian Guy channel and watch the content, which is usually on the similar lines of creativity, design, innovation, and lifestyle. And if you like these videos and the content which I'm trying to build here for more than 4 years now, just subscribe and hit the bell icon. And at any point, if you find it's not valuable for you, you can unsubscribe. No hard feelings, because if it's not for you, it's for somebody else. The world is moving so fast and our interests also keep changing. So it's relatable, that decision would be. But nonetheless, if you really like what we do, support by following, support by subscribing. Also go to Dope Coffee Roasters Instagram. They are doing some cool stuff there, and make sure you also drink their coffee if you happen to be in India, because they deliver it pan India. So you also get to have the third wave coffee experience from the Dope Coffee Roasters. With that said, guys, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next video or on the next podcast or on the live stream or on the Medium articles which we write, or where else, or on Instagram, because Reels is one thing which I'm also trying to explore right now. And yeah, so basically I'll see you soon in some format or some way. And thank you for listening. Ciao.